Alright, y'all better go grab a warm beverage or a hot beverage depending on what hemisphere you're in, because this is going to be a long one. Hello, I'm Cass, and I read 124 books this year, which is the most books I've ever read in a year, in my life, minus maybe elementary. She was built different. But yeah, I just wanted to go over all the books I read in 2022 and some stats as well as my 2023 reading goals. And yeah, let's just jump right in because I already know this is going to be a nightmare for future me to edit. So first I wanted to discuss some 2022 stats. So I actually track a lot of my stats when it comes to reading, and some people think it's weird that people track their stats, and to that I say, like, you do you. I love numbers and I love collecting data about myself for myself to look back on for no reason other than my own entertainment. And so I have the number of books that I read, the number of pages I read, my average star rating, the number of days I read, and the number of books I bought, which is a scary number, I will say. Now, starting with the number of books that I read, now I forgot to do one math equation before I started, so I'm just gonna pop the numbers on the screen. This is the amount of new books that I read versus the amount of rereads. So this was the percentage of rereads and this was the percentage of new reads. Now, back in 2021, my rereads were 67%, and I'm pretty sure my rereads for this year are way lower. As for number of pages, I ended up reading 50,040 pages, which is a lot of pages. I don't know how I did that. And then I did a little bit of math and it averages out to about 137 pages a day, which is kind of high because I don't actually typically read like 100 pages per day. I'll just have random days where I'll read like 500 pages and do nothing but read all day. And so that kind of helps like balance out the days that I don't read at all. And then according to Goodreads, my average book length was 401 pages. So this year I clearly tended to pick up a lot more longer books, which is why I'm very proud that I somehow read 124 books because most of them were quite large. My average star rating was 4.3, which is incredibly high, and I'm quite happy with how high that is actually. I thought my reading would have been a lot lower in terms of star rating because I read so many new books, and new books are typically, you know, rated lower depending on how long it takes to kind of find your genre, find the authors you like, find what kind of like tropes you enjoy. And a 4.3 is quite high, but it probably can be blamed on the 28 5-star reads of Ranger's Apprentice, which is a reread. So that probably kind of skewed my average star rating a little bit. And then as for number of days I read, so out of the 365 days in a year, I read 242 of those days, which is pretty decent. I think that's, you know, above 50%. It really shows that reading has become ingrained into becoming a habit and a routine and a hobby that I enjoy. So it's kind of fun to see that doing YouTube and picking up all these other hobbies didn't kind of deter me away from reading too much. Then I thought I'd give you like a little bit of a graph so you can have a little bit of a visual in terms of the number of books I read each month, the number of pages I read each month, as well as the number of days read, and then the total number of books bought was 146. Which, I mean, I achieved my goal of only buying like 1 or 2 books per book I read. In fact, reading 124 books and buying 146 is not typically like that bad of a ratio. If you know, like, I read most of the books I bought, but I didn't. So that is something that I do really want to get into, you know, in 2023, but I'll discuss my goals after I go through every single book and their star rating and a brief summary of my thoughts if I remember anything. I'm gonna try to do like just a few sentences per book because I have, you know, 124 to get through, and yeah, let's just start. Okay, to those who actually like hold up every single book they read, like I am not that dedicated. I am not about to take off all those books off my bookshelf, so you're just gonna have to deal with the graphic on the screen. So again, I'm just making editing me suffer a little bit more, but you know, that's future Cass's problem. Now, we started the year with War Storm by Victoria Aveyard, and I did give it a 4-star review. It was the conclusion to the Red Queen series, and I really wasn't that invested in terms of like characters and stuff. I think there are a lot better book series that I became more invested in rather than the Red Queen series, but I ended up buying the entire box set, so I felt obligated to read it. I don't really remember anything other than not liking the main character and the fact that they killed off my favorite character in the second book. Then I read Broken Throne, also by Victoria Aveyard. I gave it a 3-star. It was like a novella short story collection. I don't think it was like a novella, but it was a short story collection about like the backstory of some characters and where the characters are after, and like I said, I don't really care about the characters, so I didn't really enjoy like spending time with them and figuring out where their lives went, because once I finished Warstorm, I was like, and we're done. Really not a necessary read unless you're like really invested in the Red Queen series. My reading year really started out rough because then I read Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas, and I also gave that a 3-star, and it was about two people who used to write letters to each other, and then they met and they hated each other, and it was like enemies to lovers. And I really wasn't a fan of Penelope Douglas's writing style. I think it was like really smutty. I didn't really care for it. Moving on. Then I finished like a 600-page garbage book solely for the reason I could rate it on Goodreads, because I don't believe in leaving ratings unless I read the entire book. That was Den of Vipers by K.A. Knight. I gave it 1 star. We don't have to talk about it. Then we finally got to the point where I had my first 5-star read, which is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really loved this book because I really connected with each of the characters, and it was a very like, you're just kind of there for the vibes, not really the plot. Like the plot eventually does kind of lead up to something, but it's not as like dramatic as the book was leading it to believe. But I really enjoyed the sibling dynamic of like each character, and having grown up with 4 siblings as well, it was kind of fun to see kind of like the grown-up interactions and comparing them to my own siblings, so that was super fun. And yeah, first 5-star of the year, and I really wish I'd read more Taylor Jenkins Reid books in 2022, but that didn't really happen. Then I read The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klein. I gave it 3.5 stars. It took me forever to get into, and Linus, the main character, I just could not connect to. It was weird reading about a book from like the perspective of like this old grumpy man who has like a 9-to-5 career job and is just like bored and stagnant in life. I'm like, I don't really relate to you, and books, I'm very character-based when it comes to books, so if I don't connect to a character, it's going to be hard for me to be invested. But once he went to the orphanage, I started connecting to the children a little bit more, but it wasn't really enough to like redeem the book for me. So yeah, 3.5, not super memorable. Then I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, which I did give 4 stars. However, my opinions on Colleen Hoover throughout the past year have definitely changed, and I don't like the way in which she traumatizes her audience and almost romanticizes toxicity in relationships, especially since I've seen a lot of younger people reading about love perceived in this way, with the redemption that they kind of get is just like leaves an ick in my mouth. But I don't typically change Goodreads star ratings. I kind of go with like my gut reaction after I read the book, and then my opinions might change within like a week or so. I might change it, but after like months have passed, I didn't. And yeah, Colleen Hoover, I'm not reading any more of her books, and I don't recommend her books to anyone, but I know they're really popular, and I just wish people would give other authors that have just better writing and better ways of storytelling than Colleen Hoover. But that's all I'm saying on CH. Don't come for me. Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, I gave 4 stars. It was a memoir, and I think that I gave it 4 stars simply because I think the writing was slightly too wordy for me to get through, but it was also like very heartbreaking. I definitely cried during this book when she talks about her mother passing away and kind of her final moments. I thought that was like extremely sad, and I have like this massive fear of like my parents dying, so that wasn't like super great for me to read about, which is probably why I cried. Next, I read Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Septis, and I gave that a 3.5. It was a historical fiction, and it's about the Lithuanians who were displaced to Siberia work camps during World War II, and I don't remember this book in the slightest, so we're just gonna move on. Then I read House of Earth and Blood. It was a reread. I gave it 5 stars. I think I gave it a lower rating the first time, and then I upped my rating the second time, which is typically how it goes with Sarah J Maas books, simply because they're kind of hard to get into. This book was very info dumpy, but by the end of the book, I really did get invested in the characters, and the world building was kind of cool, if not very info dumpy, and I really like how the politics happen. I'm excited for the 3rd book to come out eventually. Then I read The Help by Catherine Stockett. I gave 4 stars, and I think this was written by a white author, which I think was where it gave me the ick, because that's not her story to tell. Then I read Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This was the 2nd book in the Dark Artifices series. I think I gave this one 4 stars because it was pretty slow. Julian and Emma just annoyed me for how whiny they were, so I gave it 4 stars. And then I read my like #1 favorite book of the year, which is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I obviously gave that I almost said 4 stars. I obviously gave that 5 stars. It was phenomenal. We follow our main character Kvothe, and he is telling his story of how he became like the world's most like renowned and infamous magician. It's just like a stunning story. The storytelling is stunning. The writing is stunning. The dialogue is so witty. It's just such a fun time. Then I read Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, which is the 3rd book in the Dark Artifices series, and I did give that one 5 stars. I think the pacing moved a little bit better, and they left Easter eggs for a potential plot where we see characters from the Mortal Instruments, which I freaking love the idea of. Then I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, which I gave 5 stars. It's a childhood best friends to lovers / reconnecting the childhood best friends. And yeah, it was a fun time. I love the characters. It's definitely gonna get a reread sometime in the future. It was so cute. It was so wholesome. I definitely cried at the end. So good. Then I read The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisenberger, and this I gave 3 stars. I only read it because I'm literally a big fan of the movie The Devil Wears Prada. The casting in that movie is literally iconic. The soundtrack, iconic. The dialogue, iconic. And the book just was not it. I wasn't a fan of like any of the characters, nor the dialogue, nor really the writing. It fell flat for me, but I'm glad I read it regardless, for I knew the source material of like my favorite movie. Gallant by V.A. Schwab is one that I gave 3 stars. I don't remember anything about this really other than it not being my favorite, so I gave it 3 stars. The Life and Medieval Times of Kit Sweeney by Jamie Paxton, I gave 3 stars. It was cool in which like the setting took place, but where the plot and the characters went, it was my favorite. So essentially this girl works at medieval times and she's not allowed to be a knight, but she wants to be a knight, but you know, people are misogynistic in the Middle Ages, so there were no girls knights. Then I read The Atlas Six, which I did give 4 stars by Oliver Blake. Olivie? Gave 4 stars. I'm gonna read the sequel pretty soon here. It was a very interesting book. It did take me forever to get into, which is why I gave it 4 stars because it was a little bit confusing, but I enjoyed it once I got into it. Then I read the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver, which was Delirium, Pandemonium, and Requiem. Delirium I gave 3.25. Pandemonium I gave 3.5, and then Requiem I gave 3. This series was a waste of my time, and that's all I'm gonna say. Then I read A War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I did give this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed the ending, and I'm just not the biggest fan of whoever the main characters are, Poppy and what's-his-face. Can I edit JLA's books? Or can like one of y'all edit them? Like cut out all the unnecessary shit to make it less than 600 pages, because those books do not need to be 600 pages. Then I read Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, an absolute classic. It's Twilight. I don't know what else to say. Renegades by Marissa Meyer was one that has been on my radar for a while because it's a Marissa Meyer book and I really love the Lunar Chronicles as well as Heartless. And so I was pleasantly surprised at like the following of the villain infiltrating the superheroes. This was very character-based. Marissa Meyer knows how to write good characters, which is why I enjoy her books so much. They really like wrap you in straight away, and I will eventually reread the series. I did really enjoy it. Yeah, give the first one 5 stars. Next are books that I really won't discuss in detail at all because there's 28 books, which is like all of the Ranger's Apprentice series. So we have Ranger's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlan, and The Burning Bridge. Both of those I gave 5 stars. We follow our little apprentice Will and his basically adventures throughout this entire series. The first book kind of introduces him and introduces like how ranger training works as he is chosen to become a ranger, and rangers are elite forces of archers that protect the kingdom. Then I read Arch Enemies and Supernova, yeah, by Marissa Meyer. The Arch Enemies, which is the second book of the Renegades trilogy, I gave 5 stars, and then Supernova I gave 4 stars. The last book's pacing was a little off, which is why I gave it 4 stars, but it's still a really solid series overall. Then I read 4 more Ranger's Apprentice books. So we have The Icebound Land, The Battle for Scandia, Eric's Ransom, and The Siege of Mackinaw. All of them 5 stars. We're still following Will on his adventures, but in Siege of Mackinaw we finally get him as like a fully fledged qualified ranger, so he completed his training. It's so fun. I love I love Ranger's Apprentice so much. Then I read The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee, which is the first book in the Avatar The Last Airbender series. We're following Kyoshi and it's her like origin story, which is so fun because I love seeing Avatar, the TV show, translated to book form. It is so fun to read about the universe and I plan on continuing the series into 2023. I did give it 5 stars. It was so fun. Kyoshi's such a badass. Then I read Heartstoppers Volume 1, 2, and 3. All of those got 5 stars. They were such a fun, cute time. I read them for I could watch the TV adaptation, which was so good. The casting, the writing, the directing, everything about that TV show was impeccable, and that is what fans want when we ask for a book to movie/TV show adaptation. Then I read The Young Elites by Mary Lou, and Mary Lou is an author similar to Marissa Meyer, where I like a lot of her books. And when I read The Young Elites, I was like, this is the book that got you more popular, because it was garbage. I gave it 2 stars. I don't remember a single damn thing about that book, and I promptly unhauled it. Then I read 2 more Ranger's Apprentice books, The Kings of Clonmel and Halt's Peril. 5 stars. Halt was in peril, for sure. Book Lovers by Emily Henry was my next book. Again, I was so excited to read more Emily Henry books, and Book Lovers did not disappoint. I did give it 5 stars. And then immediately after Book Lovers, I did read Beach Read, and I gave it 4 stars. And I don't know if it was because I was still hung up on the characters in Book Read? Beach Read? Book Read? Book Lovers. I don't know if it was still because I was caught up on the characters in Book Lovers that I gave Beach Read 4 stars, but I still enjoyed it. It just wasn't my favorite out of all the Emily Henry books that I had read so far. Then I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which actually ended up getting into my top 10 favorite books of the year. I think I just related to the characters so much, and the dialogue was so good, the romance was so good, and just everything about this book was so cute, and it is definitely due for a reread in the new year. And yeah, I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 4, another 5-star read. I really like how Alice Oseman is able to talk about difficult and heavy topics in an educational but still like lighthearted way, where the book isn't completely dragged down by the mental disorders that are being discussed in this book. However, they're not exactly like pushed away as like some like quirky personality trait. It's like a real thing that our main character's going through, and I think it's handled in a very eloquent way. Then I read Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1. I meant to read the rest of the series. That didn't happen. I gave it 4 stars. I eventually want to read the rest of Tokyo Ghoul. Then I read Clockwork Prince, which is the second book in the Infernal Devices series. I did give it 4 stars, it looks like, and that was mostly because it was a reread. So I think I already rated it 4 stars, but I reread it to annotate it to give it to Katie, because we did like a book swap of our favorite books when we met each other for the first time. Then we're still continuing on with the Ranger's Apprentice universe. I read Brother Band Book 1, The Outcasts, 5 stars. I will say this book is slower than all the other books, but it's still a solid book to get into, and again, I'm very character-based, and the characters in this book are so good. Aragon by Christopher Paolini got 5 stars. I was pleasantly surprised considering that I hadn't picked up this book, but we're following our main character, Aragon, and his little dragon, Saphira, and his adventures. So it's kind of similar in terms of like an adventure fiction to Ranger's Apprentice, but it has dragons. So Diary of an Oxygen Thief was published by Anonymous, and I gave it 2 stars, and honestly looking back I think I would give it 1 star. It was not good. It was like, I don't want to talk about it. Then I read The Spanish Love Deception by Elena's Armas. I definitely gave it 5 stars, and it definitely ended up in my top 10 favorite books of the year. It was just so fun, and I really loved the characters, and the romance was so good. Fake dating, which is my favorite trope, so I'm pretty easy to please in terms of fake dating. Then I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, which I gave a 4.5. Mostly because I literally hate the amount of pop references that are in this book. And if you are one that doesn't mind it and likes kind of like that Easter egg of like constantly having pop culture references dropped, then this book you'll love, because I think the romance was really cute and the characters were so cute and they're a little high school romance, but I just could not handle the amount of pop culture references in this book. Then I'm like scrolling, I'm like, why am I still scrolling? I like binge read the rest of Brother Band for the most part. So I read The Invaders Book 2, The Hunters Book 3, Slaves of Sakara Book 4, Scorpion Mountain Book 5, The Ghost Faces Book 6, The Caldera Book 7, Return of the Tamunjai Book 8. All of those got 5 stars. We're following the Herons. They're a Brother Band crew led by Hal. Super fun, love all their adventures. Then I read The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, which was our very first Wyverns and Words book club book. I gave it 3 stars, and I think it was mostly because I am just not at that point to read a high fantasy like that, but it was genius. If you're a big fan of high fantasy, I think you would really enjoy the 5th season, but I just don't think I was in the mindset to like dive into a high fantasy at that point. So I was just confused trying to finish the book. Yeah, wasn't my favorite, but I get why people love it. Then I read Caraval, Legendary, and Finale, and I gave all of those 5 stars, it looks like. I really enjoyed the romances, even though the first book, Who We Follow, I didn't enjoy, and then the second book, I was like, yes, this is the characters I like more, and then they got a little bit annoying. But I think overall as a series, Stephanie Garber's writing is just so whimsical and fun that I enjoyed it regardless of being like a little bit annoyed at the characters, because the universe was so fun to be in. Red, White, and Royal Blue got a 5-star from me. It was one that my best friend Lexi was like begging me to read because she thought I might like it. She was absolutely right. Casey McQuiston just really got me with this romance. It was so cute. I want to reread it so badly. It was just a fun little romance. Then we have The Stern Chase by John Flanagan, which is book 9 in the Brother Band series. Got 5 stars, moving on. Just kidding, we're back on the topic of Ranged Apprentice. I've read book 10, 5 stars, The Emperor of Naijaha. Moving on. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, 5 stars. Literally one of my new favorite series, made in my top 10 books of the year. We're following Rin, and she trains in the academy to become kind of like a military, I was gonna say military warrior, that's just called a soldier. She trains to be a soldier in the army. Basically, she studied really hard to get into this academy to escape her like really shitty home life, and we just get to follow her as the country and the world basically goes into war. Then I read 50 Shades of Grey, I gave it 1 star. We're moving on. It was so garbage. Why do people like this book? Then I read Wires and Nerves Volume 1 and then Wires and Nerves Volume 2 Gone Rogue by Marissa Meyer. And it's like a graphic novel series following Iko, which is one of the characters from the Lunar Chronicles. I gave both of them 4 stars. I wasn't like super thrilled on like the writing nor the art style, so that kind of put me off, but I read them both in a day. They were cute. Then I read K-Pop Confidential by Stephen Lee, which I gave 3 stars, but low-key I think I would up my rating to 4 stars because I would 100% reread this book. It was so fun. It was like so unrealistic, but it was just fun to see like a fictional K-pop idol trainee and someone who's a fan of K-pop. I think you'd enjoy this. If you just kind of like let go and just be in the story to be in the story and don't like compare it to real K-pop idols and compare if it would be realistic or not, because it's not, but it's fun. Then I read Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and I did give this one 3.75. It was a Wyverns and Words book club book, and I didn't really, it took me a while to get into, and I wasn't super invested in the characters in this book, but then I picked up Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. In that book, I definitely got more invested in the characters that were introduced in the beginning, and then we started following their plotline and characters, and I really enjoyed them more than the first one. Strange the Dreamer, like I said, I gave 3.75, and then Muse of Nightmares I did give 4 stars. I read those back to back, and I think that was a good way to read them. Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood got 4 stars. I think I originally rated it 5 stars and dropped it down just because I didn't love it as much as The Love Hypothesis. Why was there a gun brought into this book? That is my question. K-Pop Revolution by Stephen Lee was the second book in the like K-pop duology situation. I gave 4 stars. I would 100% reread that duology again. It was just fun. I got nothing. It was fun. Then I read the Cruel Prince trilogy, so The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. Cruel Prince got 5 stars. I wasn't really in this series for the romance. I was in it for like the political situations going on, and so I think that's why I enjoyed The Cruel Prince more than the other two. The Wicked King got 3 stars from me, and The Queen of Nothing got 4 stars. I don't remember anything that happens like to differentiate each book because I literally read all 3 of them in a day like a maniac. Oh my gosh, I don't know how people film these videos. This is so freaking long and I'm tired of talking. The American Roommate Experience by Elena's Armas, I did give 5 stars. I think I would give it like a 4.75 now though, because I didn't love it as much as The Spanish Love Deception. It was still really cute. I annotated it and the tabs look stunning. Then I read Molly's Game, From Hollywood's Elite to Wall Street's Billionaire, Boys Club, My High Stakes Adventure in the World of Underground Poker. Why is that title so long? Why not just call it Molly's Game, like the movie? Obsessed with Molly's Game. It is probably like my top movie, equal with The Devil Wears Prada. I rewatched that movie like 5 times, forcing like various people to watch it with me. It was that good. It's a biography memoir situation by Molly Bloom. And yeah, it just follows her and it just tells you, like, she ends up running like an underground poker game and getting involved with the mafia on accident and getting like arrested in an indictment with the Russian mob. And yeah, her stories are wild. I think the movie adaptation is way better than the book though, simply because like the movie talks about the book, which I think is such a cool, like, the way that movie is directed is like my favorite thing in the world. So if you haven't watched Molly's Game, like, I definitely recommend watching the movie, and then if you get as obsessed with the movie as I am, read the book to find the differences. But I don't think I would just recommend you read the book first. I think it's definitely like a watch the movie first situation. It's so good. Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber both got 4 stars. I think it's interesting how people seem to like this soon-to-be trilogy more than the Carnival series, but I think I just found the storytelling a little more lackluster because I didn't connect with the characters as much, and things just felt a lot less high stakes. And yeah, I don't really remember what goes down in this other than like one scene where her husband's like chasing her, or her love interest. Is she married? I don't even remember. Then I read the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy, so Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed, and Kingdom of the Feared. I think Kingdom of the Wicked's 4.75. I think I upped my rating. Kingdom of the Cursed I gave 4.5, and then Kingdom of the Feared I gave 3 stars, but low-key it's like a 2.75. Looking back, it just wasn't as good as I remembered. I wish I didn't reread it, simply because I think I held this book in a higher esteem until I read it the second time, and then like reflecting on it, I was like, maybe they weren't my favorite thing. Maybe I really built that up. Lore by Alexander Bracken was a pleasant surprise. Darcy gifted me this book kindly through my Amazon wishlist. And yeah, I 5-starred this. It was a high action-packed Greek mythology situation. I don't remember how many years, but like the Greek gods are like forced to walk the earth as immortals, and they're basically hunted down because if you kill the god, you take their power. And so during like this week, they're hunted down, and there's like all these different fight scenes going on, all these like high-stake battle situations, and it was just like really fun time. It was nice to read something with like Greek mythology that wasn't Percy Jackson. Then I read Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, which was stunning. I listened to the autobiography, and she did an excellent job narrating it and writing this book. It was fascinating to hear about an actor that I didn't really know much about, but to hear her story and hear how it was told, it was phenomenal. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. Just check the trigger warnings. Then I read Spy of Families Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I gave all of them 5 stars except for Volume 6 because I didn't like the character. Actually, the character that's on the cover. Do I remember her name? No. Then The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang got 5 stars. Stunning, stunning sequel to the Poppy War trilogy. And the betrayals that happen in this book, like, if you read the Poppy War, trust no one. Get attached to no one. Get ready to have your soul crushed and your heart pulverized. But it's so good, y'all should read it. We Could Be Villains by Megan McConnell was given a 2.5. I follow Megan McConnell. She designs book covers. I follow her on Instagram, so I decided to read her debut novel. And it just wasn't for me in the same way that Better Than the Movies wasn't for me in the form of like the pop culture references. I think if you're a young reader who's really into like Star Wars and the Avengers and all those like geeky nerdy things, which like I am a fan of, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like pop culture references in my book. And I think that was my mistake for reading this book in the first place, knowing that it would have a lot of those references. Bunny by Mona Awad got 2 stars. What the fuck? These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong I gave 4 stars. I really had high expectations for this book, and it was a Wyverns and Words book club book, and so I think I just thought I would enjoy it more. 4 stars. I think the romance was a little lackluster, and just the plot was interesting, and I honestly cared more about like the mystery than the romance because like what was the romance? Then I read A Year in Tokyo, an illustrated guide and memoir by Christy Ann Jones, who is like one of my favorite booktubers. Her channel is so aesthetic, and I just love how she speaks, which is like a weird thing to comment on maybe, but when I watch her videos, I wish I could speak with such like poise and elegance as she does. And instead I just like chaotically ramble and stutter over my words. So if you're here, I'm so sorry. I did give it 5 stars. It was a very beautiful novel, and the illustrations were so fun, and it was just kind of like a little prep guide because I am going to Japan next year, actually with Christy Ann Jones, so maybe I was just doing a little bit of research, you know? Then we're back to talking about Ranger Apprentice. I read the first 5 books in the Royal Ranger series, which is a spin-off series about our aforementioned apprentice Will. He is now the mentor to a new apprentice, which is the first girl ranger, Maddie. So we have A New Beginning, The Red Fox Clan, Dual Heirloom, The Missing Prince, and Escape from Police. And all of those got 5 stars. We're moving on. Our Violent Ends I did give 3.5. I gave it 3.75. It just was unmemorable. Like, again, like my previous comment, I could have gone without reading that duology and been fine. Burning God by R.F. Kuang got 5 stars though, and that was just a crazy way to end that series, and I cannot wait to reread it to relive that pain. The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams I gave 3 stars. It was pretty bleh in terms of fake dating, but I was also coming off the high of The Burning God, and so I knew any book that I read next just wouldn't match up to it. But it was just kind of bland in terms of romance. It wasn't my favorite. We're still going. A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft was another Wyverns and Words book club book, and I gave it 3 stars. It was average in every form. Story building, storytelling, world building, like characters, plot, average. Artisans Wolves is Ranger's Apprentice book 6, Royal Ranger book 6. 5 stars. Didn't really like the element of adding magic to the Ranger's Apprentice universe, but it's whatever. We're almost done. Then I read Scythe by Neil Shusterman, which is a Chaos X Cast book club pick, and I actually gave that 5 stars. I sat in one sitting, and Neil Shusterman's writing's just so easy to get sucked into. His characters are pretty well done. I didn't like the romance situation that he was trying to push at, but the plot and the political situations were really entertaining. A Shadow in the Ember and A Light in the Flame were the 2 prequel series that I was aforementioning, like fucking a billion years ago, by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I still believe that she needs an editor. The second book was like really repetitive, but both got 4 stars. I'm invested in the romance. I love it. Then we had The Tournament at Gorlan and The Battle of Hackham Heath by John Flanagan. Both of them got 5 stars. This is the early years prequel series to Ranger's Apprentice. That wraps up all 28 Ranger's Apprentice books, so we're done talking about those. XOXO by Axio I gave a 4.5. It was another K-pop book, but this time instead of following a K-pop trainee as our main character, it follows a girl who accidentally meets a K-pop trainee, and they're like hidden romance. And her knowing nothing about K-pop, it was just so fun to see her like learning about his world and like their secret little romance, and it was just so cute. Then I finally finished a book that took me literally like 11 months to finish, and that was The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. It was the second book in the Kingkiller Chronicles. And oh my gosh, I wish I remembered the first half of this book, but the second half of the book was so good, and I really loved his adventures, especially with Tempe, and I cannot wait to reread this book just to pick up even more things and like retain what happens even better. And hopefully it not take me 11 months. Beyond the One, The Magic and Mayhem of Growing Up a Wizard by Tom Felton. It was his autobiography. He is the actor that plays Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter. I listened to the audiobook like I always recommend in terms of like reading memoirs. And yeah, it was just a fun story if you like Harry Potter and want to hear about some behind the scenes. And it also touches on like his life and some hardships he went through. Definitely check the trigger warnings because it does deal with some sensitive topics, but I think it was a solid read if you're a fan of Harry Potter. Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan was another Wyverns and Words book club book. It got 4.5. The only thing that dropped the star rating from a 5-star was the inconsistency with like the plot line and the time jumpings, but I really like the characters. I think the romance was super cute, and I almost wish we got more of it than we did. Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman got 4 stars. It was the second book in the Arc of the Scythe series, and it was a little bit slower to get into, so that's why I got 4 stars. And then we're on the last book, which is Guild by Raven Kennedy, which I gave 2 stars. No, I gave 2.5 stars, and it was it was not good. Why did I say it was good? It was good enough for me to want to continue it, but like not really. Also, there were pirates. Where did the pirates come from? I'm only continuing it because Katie has spoken very highly about the 3rd book, so I'm just like trying to make it to the 3rd book. Okay, now I'm briefly going to discuss my goals because this video is already going to be a nightmare to edit. And hopefully you enjoyed hearing my thoughts about all 124 books. But here are some goals. Read more high fantasy. Read more sci-fi. Now, both of these are genres that I love. Like every time I read a high fantasy book, I'm like so invested and I love it. And then every time I read a sci-fi book, I'm like, wow, like why don't I read more sci-fi? But then I never read more sci-fi. I'm looking at You, Ender's Game. I'm like obsessed with that book. I love that book. I want to reread that book. It is so good. I reread that back in like 2021 though. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, 2 genres that I love, but I never reach for, so I want to reach for them more. As for like a number goal, I want to read 100 books, but I never focus on like trying to read a certain amount of books. I just read when I'm in the mood, and if I happen to read 100 books, I get the confetti on Goodreads, which is like a whole serotonin boost. But I thought I'd set it at 100 because the last time I set it at 100, I didn't achieve my goal. But since I've now read 124 books in a year, I'm like, maybe I can get the confetti on Goodreads with 100 books. I think that'd be fun. I just crave the confetti validation, okay? I put not buying books, but like, she's a fool. I will be buying books, but I want to buy a lot less books, and I plan on unhauling quite a bit of books. The goal is to like not buy that many books for like the first half of the year and borrow more from the library, and then I can go back and buy those books that I enjoyed. Because I'm moving seems so nightmarish with like the amount of books that I have, and to then add to that collection for like 6 months is gonna be no. It's gonna be no. So I'm gonna borrow from the library a lot more. We're putting that into the universe right now. We're borrowing from the library. Future Cass, are you hearing me? The library is free, and I want to reduce my physical TBR because I'm like, if I'm reducing my physical TBR, if I buy more books, it's just going to increase it. So I just want to read the books that I own, and then I can get rid of the books that I don't like and clear up more space for books that I will like. And then my last goal is going to be the hardest one ever, and that is only reading one Ranger's Apprentice book per month. I'm hosting a Ranger's Apprentice read-along because I talk about Ranger's Apprentice so much, and it's my favorite. And I'm gonna stick to the schedule that I posted talking about it, but it's just like 28 books. Could be 28 new books instead of rereading all 28 every year. We'll see how this goes. I might break and just binge read because it's like my comfort series. I love it, but it gives me opportunities to reread other books that I love and read new books, so it's fine. Now, my throat hurts so bad, so I'm going to end this video. How do people talk about things in like a quick manner? I was talking so fast as well, so I do apologize if my enunciation was bad. I tried my best. Thank you so much to my lovely Patreons over on ChaosXCast for supporting my channel. Y'all literally mean the world to me. Thank y'all for sticking through this video that literally took me 50 minutes to film. Why has it almost been an hour of me filming? Leave an emoji. I don't know why I did this. Leave this emoji if you made it this far. I'd love to know who stuck around through this absolute nightmare. And I really hope to see you in the next one. Toodles!